What's up? My name is Ryan. I'm a musician and tech entrepreneur living in Seoul, Korea. In this video, I'm going to explain how and why I got casted on a reality TV show in Korea. First of all, I didn't come to Korea to get into film or acting or anything like that. I came to make music and I came to learn the Korean language, and I really just came to retire from my past life as a software developer and manager. But that's where Instagram comes in. When I got to Korea, I realized that nobody here really likes tweeting. But tweeting was the only thing I did on social media for the last 10 or so years. So with the advice of a friend, I actually switched to Instagram and made my first post on January 11th. One thing I decided I was going to do differently with my Instagram instead of my Twitter or my blog is that I would speak only in Korean. That just means a Korean profile and Korean captions on my photos. I can't really say I'm very good at Instagram. However, I completely credit Instagram to how I caught on this TV show. Here's how the whole thing went down. February 25th, I went on a radio show called Uncoded. The host that day was a guy named Paul. Hi, Paul. A few weeks later, I changed my Korean study routine to be mostly focused on listening. That's gonna come into play in a minute. On March 25th, Paul asked me over Instagram direct message if I knew anything about cooking or would want to go on some kind of TV program as a New Yorker learning how to make Korean food. I said sure, and 4 days later, I got a phone call from the network. To be honest, I was scared to death. Within about 15 seconds, I said, no, I'm too much of a beginner at Korean, and I backed out of the opportunity. I told Paul, hey man, thanks for sending that introduction over, but I'm just not ready yet. I really appreciate it. The next day, March 30th, I sent an email to a language exchange instructor who was actually creating those podcasts I was using for my listening practice. I told him what had happened with the television show and how I just wasn't ready yet to speak Korean on TV given my level of language learning. But according to him, this is actually really normal. People that don't speak Korean are on Korean TV shows all the time. The key is to fake it. With this in mind, I decided that the next time I got a TV opportunity, I wouldn't let it go and call myself too much of a beginner. Well, wouldn't you know, 2 weeks later, on April 14th, 2021, I received a second direct message from a different writer at a different television network asking me if I would have any interest in going on a reality cooking show. This was like a sign to me, so of course I said, sure, I'm interested. On April 15th, the next day, I had about a 20-minute phone call with this writer. It was actually excruciatingly painful, and I was really nervous about screwing up my Korean and not understanding what this person was saying. When I hung up the phone call, I was pretty sure that I missed out on the opportunity, but at least I gave it a shot. Yet, 6 days later, April 21st, I was called in to the studio to do an interview. Originally, I thought I would just be meeting with that writer who I spoke to over Instagram and the phone. But when I got there were a bunch of cameras set up and several other people in the room. This interview ended up being around 1 hour long, and it was done in all Korean. On multiple occasions, I found myself saying, but how do I say that? While everyone just stared at me, waiting for my response. And again, when this interview ended, I thought, that's it, I'm screwed. For the next week or so, I exchanged a couple text messages with this writer, but it was really just being polite, asking how they were doing. I was actually on a trip from Seoul to Busan via bicycle that week, so other than that, I wasn't really talking to anybody, and again, I assumed this opportunity was going to be going to someone else. Fast forward all the way till May 26th. By this point, I had been contacted by a different writer on the same TV show, and they told me that I was a finalist, and I just needed to do a couple more conversations with them to make sure that I was a good fit for the show. And then, on the last day of May 2021, I was officially chosen to be on Class, a new reality show in Korea where they teach 6 different non-Korean foreigners how to make traditional Korean dishes. On June 1st, they told me the wardrobe I would need: white shirt, black sweatpants. So on June 2nd, I went shopping for it, and on June 4th, the filming began. Here's how the show worked. We filmed every week, basically all day, usually on Fridays, from around 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. First, you arrive at the studio, then you do makeup, then you go eat lunch with the other cast members, then you get more makeup done to fix what you did at lunch, Then you have a meeting with your writer to talk about that day's episodes and any interesting conversations you might be able to have with the hosts. And finally, you begin filming. For the first few episodes, we weren't really sure what the format should be. So we basically cooked the whole time, filmed the whole time, took no breaks, and we were standing making food for about 6 hours straight. But eventually, we settled into a sort of cadence where we would cook for a couple hours, take a break, cook and learn for a couple hours, take another break. The cast also became friendly with one another, and we even started hanging out outside of work. Thanks to the show, I also got to explore a bit of Korea outside of the studio. On one occasion, when I was last place for the food I made, I was given a punishment to visit Daenamu Soup, which is the bamboo forest, a famous attraction in Korea. And I also went to learn how they make, by hand, soy sauce and doenjang. What was that place I went? Cheonledo? But I wasn't always last place. I was also first on one episode. This is when we made cheonbokjuk, which is abalone porridge, and I decided to add fried bacon into it. And later, when my colleague Amy was first place, they gave her any wish she wanted. Her choice was for me to do a duet with the talented and famous Seyoung, our co-host. Finally, after 14 episodes together, we finished the show with the finale at Baek Jong-won's cooking lab studio office thing. On that final episode, I actually didn't have to cook at all. Instead, Baek Jong-won cooked for us, and it was just incredible. He made us homemade samjang. We had, I don't even know things how to pronounce. That day, Fabri cooked for us. Sung Shi-kyung made us all. That's it for the overall show experience. We filmed June, July, August, and September 2021, every week, once or twice a week, with maybe one break for the Korean Chuseok holiday. Now I want to answer a lot of the questions that I've received from people over the last few months. How much did I get paid? Well, I can't speak for anyone else in the cast, but I was personally compensated 500,000 won per episode. 500,000 won is roughly $450 US. To be honest, this was really low pay for this kind of work. It takes all day and you have to do more things outside of the shooting itself to participate each week. But I agreed to do the gig anyway because ultimately I wanted this experience and I wanted to see if I could leverage this into additional opportunities for my music career. How are the other cast members? In Korea, we call Korean people people and non-Korean people foreigners. In fact, even foreigners do this, so it's okay. As for the hosts, they were really nice, high energy, and super patient with us while we butchered dish after dish. Remember, we were learning how to make traditional Korean food, so there's kind of a specific taste, and we really never pulled it off, to be honest. As for the foreigners, they were also smart, ambitious people. It's difficult to find someone who lands on the other side of the earth speaking a different language on national TV who got there by accident. From our Michelin star chef Fabri to the Iranian Formula One race car driver, restaurant owner, and DJ Aiden, everybody was just really cool and successful in their own right. What is the commitment like? I mentioned that we would film basically all day once a week. But in addition to that, we had to do multiple phone calls and text message conversations with our writers throughout the week. You see, at our program, every cast member has their own writer. Your writer kind of becomes like your manager. And so they call you to talk about ingredients and what's going to happen on the show that week. They check your availability, they check on your condition, they make sure you're getting a corona test, all that kind of stuff. And in addition to that, if we were last place, we had to do filming outside of Seoul. And even during the week at our own house, we had to film ourselves preparing dishes or remaking dishes from the previous week's episode. An example of this would be a phone call where I'm talking to the writer and they say, do you have this kind of green pepper at regular grocery stores in America? And if we don't, we might have to change that week's recipe. But if we do, they might call me the next day and ask which grocery store brands have it. And then they might call me the next day and ask how common it is or how expensive it is. And then they might call me the next day to ask if that particular vegetable or fruit is in season at the same time it's in season in Korea. How fluent do you need to be? Korea in particular is really interested in foreigners who speak Korean. So there are actually a lot of television show opportunities for people like me to speak our varied levels of Korean on television. But the thing is, if you speak Korean too well, you're almost less entertaining. And that's where I come in. I actually think one of the reasons I was chosen to be on this TV show is simply because I'm bad at Korean. But if you mix up bad at language with confident to speak the language, you get funny TV. And to be clear, I actually study and practice Korean every day. But I would also be told by my writer every week that I should not study for that week's episode. So I'd say the hardest part about being on the show in terms of speaking a new language was the initial interview and the first day of filming. Once you get past that, every week afterwards was pretty easy. Lastly, I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of reality TV in Korea. First, the good. Just kidding. The food, of course. Not only did I get to eat amazing food by celebrity chefs, I also learned to cook a lot of different dishes. Until this show, I legitimately spent the last 2 or 3 years eating out for every meal, or of course, letting someone else cook for me. I never ever cooked for myself. But now I know how to make keranjidan, and I eat it every single day. Another thing that was great about the show is just how fun it can be to make an idiot of yourself in front of a bunch of cameras and not give a crap. Another cool thing is, of course, being recognized in public. Now for me, this only happened a couple times, but each occasion was really special and it made me grateful for all the effort we had to put into making the show every week. Next, the bad. As I already told you, the pay was pretty low. If you averaged out all the time we spent working on the show, from the filming day to the phone calls to the preparation to buying ingredients, throughout the week, I would say we only got paid about $20 per hour. And since we only worked for 10 hours a week, there's no way that you could be a full-time television star in Korea as a foreigner who isn't already famous and make a full-time living. We also weren't given many guarantees about when the next shooting day would be, or where it would be, or for how long it would be. In fact, a lot of extra footage we created at home was never aired on television. And I want to say a small thing. As you might know, Korea and Japan have a very interesting relationship. So what we learned was that if you say something like sushi or something positive about Japan, they might cut it out of the television when it airs, which could make that segment awkward. And there were multiple times where the writers said to me from behind stage, "Lion, no! Lion, no!" because I used a Japanese positive expression. 예를 들면, kanji atte 말하지 마. And finally, the ugly. To be honest, I almost quit our show around the 5th episode. I had just received an offer to go on a new singing show, but my network was telling me that I can't do 2 shows at once. Of course, the singing opportunity was really more aligned with why I came to Korea than a cooking show. So I got in a lot of fights with the writers talking about it. In addition to that, there were even radio, commercial, and other music interview-related gigs that I also had to turn down because according to my network, doing too many things at once is not cool in the eyes of the Korean consumer. To be clear, I did not have any exclusive agreement with them, and I reminded them of this. But according to them, 우리나라에서, in Korea, in our country, this is how things work. Needless to say, as an independent thinking American, that didn't sit right with me. But after several heated meetings with writers and producers, we came to an agreement that allowed me to do really any other type of media I wanted except that one singing show. So I didn't quit. But really, besides all of that drama, what I don't love about the Korean reality TV show experience, at least in modern times, is that it seems like the people who watch you on TV aren't necessarily the people who will follow you on social media. So while we might have had 500,000 or 1 million people watching our show every weeknight, we only got a few new followers every weekday from that show. Which means the show ultimately wasn't aligned with my goals here in Korea. It was good for my vanity, it's a fun ego stroke, and I did get to meet a lot of great people, but I probably could have gotten more value out of simply writing songs in my room every day and focusing on studying the Korean language than getting in front of cameras every Friday and putting on makeup. But, despite all the ups and downs, it was a truly incredible and unique experience to be one of the stars on a reality TV show, just in general, much less in Seoul, Korea, with the very famous Baek Jong-won chef and all of the other cast members that I got to meet and work with for the last few months. I've also been introduced to a lot of other opportunities because of this show, and for that I will be forever grateful. So, thank you KBS, thank you 사부님, thank you 상선배, thank you other foreigner weirdos like me who I got to hang out with and cook with and work with for the last few months. Until next time. 슬레이트 할게!